And greetings and welcome, my friend. Here is squat chain day. This is workout number 3 here in my beautiful strength program, kind of giving you a sample of how I'm training legs with this. We're starting off with a little bit of just loosening up joints, but this is also a very good stability exercise because when we're circling our knee, it's not only loosening up the leg, but also stabilizing the leg we're standing on. Then moving on into some shifting squats. This is a staple for lots of my lower body training that we have in all my programs, grind style calisthenics, warming up for progressive calisthenics in general. Very good for the stability, getting used to having a lot more hip control on one leg after another. Also really good just pulling the hip down towards the heel, getting that pulling faction in with our squats. And then just kind of moving on into some simple reaching bridges, as I call these. These are a good way to twist, elevate the hips, still working on packing the shoulders. This is very much for the lats. I'm working on pulling my arm towards my feet, not trying to push the floor apart back and forth. I'm also a little bit stiff in my back in general, so I was using that for a good way to just kind of loosen up the muscles along the spine. And then some shifting lunges, because the primary exercise in beautiful strength is the lunge movement. We're going to be doing walking weighted lunges today. So I just want to kind of get my body used to the movement, still trying to pay attention and maintaining in the glutes, quads, and calves. And so we start off with just a little bit of some walking lunges, trying to get the framing here a little bit better with my camera and stuff. It's kind of hard for me to make sure that it is all in focus and stuff with such a distance. I'm lucky that I have this gym here where I live where I can get a good long distance. You of course can use reverse lunges where you're just stepping in place, going backwards, but when I have the opportunities, I always much prefer to lunge for distance where I'm going for a long kind of length of a room, sometimes in an open field or something. It's just something psychological for me to be able to go towards a destination rather than having to count repetitions, but do what suits you best. And then we're going into our weighted lunges here. Now, the key with the weighted lunges, of course, is that you're still trying to utilize the best lunge technique that you can. I've got 30-pound dumbbells here. I'm actually nursing a bit of a lower leg injury that I suffered earlier in the week, so I'm not going too heavy with this, but this is also giving me the opportunity to try and get as low and as deep as I possibly can. The goal here, like all weighted calisthenics exercises, is not to lift as much weight as possible, because it's not weight that gets you stronger. It's the amount of tension in the muscle that makes you stronger. And you're gonna have more tension in the muscles when you get in a deeper range of motion. So I'm literally trying to treat this like almost a weighted stretch and getting as low as I can. Supersetting this with a little bit of some extension work. This is one of the support chain exercises. Of course, we have the seated hip bridge. Some people call these like a reverse plank. Very good for the glutes and the hamstrings. Also trying to stabilize in my back. I am actively trying to squeeze the floor together between my hands and my heels. This is, quote, not a lower back exercise. You don't want to necessarily feel like you're working your lower back rather than integrating it. This is all about muscle tension and activation in the glutes and the hamstrings. So if you ever do this exercise and you're like, oh, wow, I really feel that in my lower back, that usually feels either you don't have enough stability in your upper back and your lats, or your glutes and your hamstrings are not engaged enough through the range of motion. Moving on here, we got another round of the lunges, this time going for longer distance. I'm going the entire length of this isn't the gym, this is more the side room in the gym here. So I'm trying to make sure that I can get a good long distance, putting a good solid pause in the bottom each time. And I'm also really paying attention to try and get as much of my weight on my front leg as I can. Remember, we don't want to feel like lunges are equally weighted 50-50. You can almost think of them as more of like a single leg or alternated single leg squat. And that's essentially what I'm trying to do, is maintaining tension in my glutes and my quads from one position to the other. I'm not letting it release in the bottom. I'm pulling myself up and forward off with my front leg as well. A lot of times when you see folks lunging with a considerable amount of external load, they're really using their back leg. They're kind of pushing off their back leg in order to propel themselves forwards. And here, instead, you want to almost feel like the front leg is doing all the work. You almost want to have the back leg almost like a dead leg. You want to use it as little as you possibly can, just as a little supplement for stability, and make sure that you're not using it for the actual exercise and the propulsion. Back to the hip bridges. Starting to feel stronger on this one here, getting a little bit more height, so I'm going to progress the resistance a little bit, going with a cross ankle. This puts more weight, of course, on my left leg, and it puts a little bit of rotational challenge here in my left hip as well. Still trying to maintain the tension in my glutes as I descend. You should almost think of this, well, not almost, but it is a hip hinge exercise. This is like kettlebell swings, Romanian deadlifts, any type of classic weighted hip hinge exercise. This is kind of the body weight equivalent of it. Is it exactly the same? No, because no exercise is exactly the same as any other exercise. But fundamentally, as far as the movement pattern goes, what muscles are being worked and how they're being worked, it is largely the same thing. So this is your classic hip hinge exercise, trying to maintain tension throughout and having less pressure on the top. Going with a little bit of a different loading here, we got the sandbags. This is much lighter because it's only a 40-pound sandbag. I just found this because I've always had this thing about kind of a Zercher style approach. I like to use things that I can carry in my arms, partially because it feels like it's giving me a little bit more stability, giving me a little bit higher loading, which makes my hip have to work a little bit harder for the stability that I'm working as well. And more importantly, it's also a little bit more secure. A lot of times when we do like loaded lunges with dumbbells or kettlebells, sometimes you may feel like there's a bit of a swinging motion with the dumbbells where they kind of swing forward, which not only makes the exercise easier, but it can also potentially put some more stress and strain on your lower back. Whenever I'm doing this, I want to think of like step and then squat down. You don't want any forward momentum as you're squatting down. It's a very straight down squat. And then here we go, last time here with the hip bridge, going back right immediately with the cross ankle, always taking a moment before I do any exercise to set the tension in my muscles. I'm getting my lats engaged, my traps, my arms engaged, glutes, hamstrings. I'm not just jumping into the movement, kind of like drop and give me 20 type push-ups sort of thing. You can see my range of motions getting shorter as my muscles are getting more fatigued. I'm not getting as much activation of my glutes and my hamstrings. So I'm just using what I got for activation here, using what I have for engagement, and basically finishing off the glutes and the hamstrings. Of course, the glutes were working to a considerable degree during the lunges, so they're pretty smoked, trying to use the hamstrings to even things out. But between these two exercises, they really do work the legs quite well. Thanks for watching. Be fit and live free.